Welcome to episode 50 of No Rares Required. Every week on Tuesdays, I do an episode that focuses on a drafting archetype. So this is specifically for limited or draft, where you have 40 cards and you're building a deck. And this is kind of to give a broad outline for how I've been approaching the archetype. And there are many different strategies that can work. So this is definitely not the only way to go about it, but this has been what's been most successful for me. So with that, Gruul is all about adventures, and I've found it to be a pretty good place to ramp. So the archetype has some synergies around having 4 power, and a lot of your 4 power comes from when you have a 4-cost card. So playing cards like Root Rider Fawn and Utopia Sprawl that can kind of help you get to your 4-drops before turn 4 has been kind of something that's just felt natural to the archetype. And so you're kind of going for a mid-range strategy. Pretty equally split between red and green cards. And you've got some really powerful uncommons in red and green. Probably one of the top 3 performing uncommons in the set, with Imadane's Recruiter, Welcome to Sweet Tooth, and Tough Cookie. So with that, let's dive into the cards specifically. So Torch the Tower, an amazing red removal card. You don't have as many bargain synergies in this archetype as you would in Izzet, where it performs slightly better, but still really great removal. And one of the things to mention is that if you do decide to go for more of an aggro strategy, which is available in this archetype, then you're really going to want cheap removal like Torch the Tower. And if you're going more towards the mid-range, Cut-In works really well if you have targets that are really good young hero roles. So like the Ratcatcher Trainee, the 2/1 First Strike, Ginger Brute, things like that. So this card tends to do better in Rakdos and Boros. And it's still really good removal that I enjoy having even in my mid-range strategies, but it's especially nice if you are going for the aggro Gruul build. We've also got Flick a Coin, and the upside to this one is that it is a card that you can take advantage of. It almost wheels. You can take it around pick 7, pick 8. Sometimes you can get it on the wheel. And it still performs best in Izzet, in my opinion, because that's where you care the most about generating treasure tokens for bargain synergies. And but it can still be a useful card in Gruul. And what's especially nice is that there's a couple of black cards specifically that you might be looking to splash in the Gruul archetype. And this helps you get one of those black sources without actually having to run any swamps. We've got Minecart Daredevil, which is best in the Gruul archetype, and kind of tells you why I ended up calling it Gruul Adventures. The Gruul archetype has long been in recent sets focused on combat tricks. And so the fact that this is a creature with 4 power, which the archetype has some synergies around, as well as a combat trick all in one card, is pretty fantastic. And also, I think that you should take advantage of the fact that this card does wheel. And a lot of people are just passing this card, so you take advantage of picking these up late. And another card that's great in the Gruul combat tricks is Titanic Growth. And specifically because I'm looking to run Ferocious Werefox, right? That we'll cover in just a second here. The more trample that you have in your deck, then the more powerful Titanic Growth becomes. Because it's not just used to remove one of your opponent's blockers, but also to push damage through. And this is another card that you can take advantage of being available late, because it definitely wheels. Sometimes it's one of the last cards in the pack. We've got Hollow Scavenger, which I've really enjoyed in every green archetype. The being able to create a food token on one and then play this as a 3/2 that can threaten into becoming a 5/4 just matches up really well in the early game. And it's one of my favorite signal cards, especially because it's good in every green archetype. If you see these around pick 6 or 7, then that's a pretty good sign that green is open. I've also I've enjoyed Leaping Ambush, maybe not as much as Titanic Growth, but the +1/+3 works nicely. Being able to make your 4/3 Trampler into a 5/6 pairs up nicely against their 5/5s, like Gingerbread Hunter, and so I've enjoyed this in Gruul when you are looking to have combat tricks, and being able to give something +1/+3 and untap it can also catch your opponents off guard. We are, starting into week 5 of the format, so we're starting to go deep, and the people who are still playing and have gotten to the point where they know the combat tricks and we'll play around this a little bit better than at the beginning of the format. But I still like to take advantage of the fact that it wheels and is some late interaction that you can plan on picking up. Hamlet Glutton has also been a top performing common and is great in every green archetype. I like it the most in Golgari and in Simic. And Golgari, just because you are more likely to have enough food synergies to reliably cast this on turn 5, and kind of fits the mid-range strategy. And same with Simic. This is a really great card to ramp to in your kind of mid-range ramp deck. And so if you are in the aggro version of Gruul, then this is not what you want to do. But if you are in the ramp version that I'm trying to build, then I love having 1 or 2 copies of Hamlet Glutton. And a card that is always worth keeping on the radar, even when you're not in the archetype specifically or in the color pair specifically, is Candy Grapple. You have a couple of other reasons. I wouldn't splash for this card alone, right? Like if you only have 1 copy of Candy Grapple, I wouldn't go out of my way to make sure that I have black sources. But if I'm already planning on running cards that require black, then Candy Grapples become a pretty easy inclusion because they are the best cheap interaction at common. And so keep your eyes out for potentially bringing in a little bit of Candy Grapple. Witch's Mark I've really enjoyed in the aggro version of Gruul. So if you are... Witch's Mark performs best in Rakdos and Boros. And so the more aggressive that you are, the more that the Wicked roll really matters. And you can use this to kind of avoid flooding when you have a lower curve. That's the way that I've been approaching it, is that, like, use it as a good way to hit your 4-drops if you max out on turn 4, and then use it to get rid of excess lands after 5 and 6. And you can take advantage of the fact that this card is not valued particularly highly, and you can plan on taking it on the wheel. Red Cap Thief is good. I think it's best in Izzet, but anytime that I'm looking to play black, play splash, which there are a couple of cards that I'm looking to splash, and splashing is pretty common in Wilds of Eldraine. So anytime that that's the case, picking up a Red Cap Thief is pretty good. And the other thing too is that this is a card that you can take advantage of it being available on the wheel. Edgewall Pack has been kind of an okay card. The issue that I have with it most of the time is that Gruul already has a lot of cards. If you look at my draft skeleton, there's a big spike on 4. And so Edgewall Pack kind of has to fight for its place. And it also doesn't have 4 power as a 4-drop, which kind of has, missing some of the synergies in Gruul specifically. But a 3/3 menace that creates a 1/1 is just really good pressure. And if you are in the Gruul aggro deck, then this can be a really good inclusion. Basically, the more similar that you are to a Boros or a Rakdos, like aggro deck, then it plays kind of similarly in Gruul. But if you're in the ramp version, then less so. Bellowing Bruiser is a card that works best in Gruul and is often available on the wheel. And I've really liked its synergies with Huntsman's Redemption, which is a rare, but being able to go look up a spell is particularly nice. So Huntsman's Redemption allows you to sacrifice a creature to then go get a creature in your deck. And when they're an adventure card, it's basically like sacrificing a creature to get a 2-for-1, getting 2 cards. And that's one of the things that's really nice about the mid-range approach to Gruul, is that you don't have to really worry about putting in card draw in your deck, because a lot of your cards are already giving you 2-for-1s. And so Bellowing Bruiser can be pretty nice to remove some of your opponent's blockers. And if you do end up getting up to 8 mana, it's been okay removing 2 blockers and then playing this down as a 4/4 haste. Ferocious Werefox, it is a werefox, not a werewolf, is good in every green archetype. So this one is also a pretty decent signaling card if you do see it late. And being able to give something +1/+1 and trample is especially nice in the mid-range strategy. And then the fact that it itself comes down as a 4/3 trampler is partly why I'm so high on Titanic Growth, specifically in the Gruul archetype. And then we have Root Rider Fawn, which I think is still best in Simic, where Simic doesn't have the option to potentially be an aggro deck. So if you are an aggro deck in Gruul, you do not want Root Rider Fawn. But if you're doing the ramp thing, which you're definitely doing in Simic, if you're doing that in your Gruul approach, then Root Rider Fawn is one of the better 2-drops that you can pick up. And not only does it ramp, but it also fixes, which is really nice if you do have some sort of black splash in Gruul. We've also got Curse of the Werefox, which is best in Simic because Simic does not have very good interaction. You have better interaction in red than Curse of the Werefox, but if you're light on your removal, it's always an option. And then lastly, we've got a couple of fixers. Evolving Wilds has worked pretty well in the format as long as you are not going for an aggressive plan. So if you are doing the Gruul aggro, then don't put tap lands into your deck. You don't want to screw up your early pressure. But if you're not doing that, if you're doing the mid-range thing, there's not really much other than Utopia Sprawl that I'm looking to do on turn 1. So it's a good place to have the Evolving Wilds. And then similarly, like a lot of the splash, you're looking to play cheap, like Gingerbread Hunter, with Crystal Grotto is a 4-cost removal spell into a 5-drop. That works pretty well. So the cheaper, like Candy Grapple 2, it only costs 3 if you have a Crystal Grotto. The +1 additional cost to use the Grotto is something that you can take advantage of for cheap spells, but once you start getting into cost 4s and cost 4 and 5, it can be problematic. So, for example, one of the mythic level uncommons in Gruul is Imidane's Recruiter. This card is absolutely amazing, right? Like if you open this up, pick it up. It's one of the top performing cards in the set. And but it doesn't work very well with Crystal Grotto because the adventure side costs 5. So for this, this is something that you would look more likely towards your treasure creators like Flick a Coin or Redcap Thief, or just playing a Plains in your deck to get with Evolving Wilds, using a Utopia Sprawl to give you a white mana for later. But yeah, definitely this is one of the reasons to be in red, and one of the reasons to be in Gruul is opening up Tough Cookie as well. So this is the other mythic level uncommon in the Gruul archetype, and being able to create a 4/4 artifact creature off of food synergies that you have off of Tough Scavenger or the Scavenger or treasures as well is something that works pretty nicely, and this is one of the best performing uncommons. And then the other reason to be in Gruul specifically is Picnic Ruiner. Gruul is its best archetype. Being able to play the adventure side and then into a 2/2 has been particularly good. And you don't have to worry about splashing. And so those are basically the top 3 reasons why I end up in the Gruul archetype. And then we also have Welcome to Sweet Tooth, which you should keep your eyes out for. It is best in Golgari and Celestia, but it's good in every green archetype. Just a little bit less so if you are looking specifically to ramp, like you might be in Gruul or Simic, because this is better if you are developing the board. But it works really well with the turn 1 Scavenger, create a food token, create Sweet Tooth, make another food token, and you can end up creating a massive amount of pressure very early on with this card. So I like it more in the Gruul builds, but I'll include it even in the mid-range one just because you need 2 drops, even if you're ramping. We've got Gingerbread Hunter, which has been best in Golgari and in Simic, but it's a good mid-range threat, even if you can't play the puny snack. Just as a 5/5 that creates a food token has been all right, and but it's got upside that you can use it as removal before playing it as a 5/5, which extends the amount of threats that you have in your hand. Two-Headed Hunter is a card that I look to take advantage of specifically in Gruul because you have the adventure synergies, and giving a large trample creature double strike is kind of like building your own Embercleave, and I think it is most easily done when you have the trample off of the Ferocious Werefox in green. And then a 5/4 Menace for 5 has been decent pressure. Witchstalker Frenzy is good in every red archetype. Because it's good in every red archetype, it's a decent signal. If you do see it later than you think it should, like pick 5 or pick 6, that would be a sign that red is actually open. And you're not really looking to go wide, but this triggers off of your opponent's attacks as well. So if they're going wide, then they can end up triggering it, and it's just 5 damage removes most of the threats in the set, outside of like Hamlet Glutton and Archive Dragon. Another one that's good in every archetype, and so it makes a pretty decent signal, is Royal Treatment. Being able to fizzle your opponent's stuff is especially important in a set where if you fizzle something like the puny snack off of Gingerbread Hunter, then if the adventure fizzles, they can't play the creature as well. So giving a creature hexproof and using it to basically like 3-for-1 your opponent feels oh so good. And so it's an easy inclusion in every green archetype. And another one that's also really good in every green archetype is Utopia Sprawl. It's not specifically reserved for the strategies of Simic and Gruul where you're trying to ramp, but it is helpful for that as well. But it gives you excellent fixing. So this is something that I look to play in every green archetype. And it's not a great signaling card because it does tend to go later than I think it should. And maybe it's just people not realizing how important it is to have flexibility in your mana base. But I've picked these up on the wheel, and it feels oh so good when that happens. And Hearth Elemental fits into the adventure strategy of Gruul, and I think it is best in Gruul. It is also really good in Izzet, being able to get through your entire hand, and then if you don't have a hand, you can discard nothing and draw 2 cards before playing this for incredibly cheap. But it does count cards that have an adventure side as well as instances and sorceries, so it works nicely if you have a lot of combat tricks and a lot of adventure cards in your deck. So Gruul works just as well as Izzet. Howling Galefang is one that I like to take advantage of specifically in Gruul. I don't really like it outside of the Gruul archetype, because this is really the one that I'm playing enough adventures that I can try to reliably cast this as a 4/4 haste with Vigilance, and the haste just really puts it over the top. It's okay filler if you can't get the haste, but if you can get the haste, then this becomes a lot of pressure for your opponent. And then we've got Agatha's Champion, which is a good signaling card. It's good in every green archetype, so if you see this late, then that could be a sign that green is open. And you do have treasures as well as food that you can use to bargain and fight one of your opponent's creatures. We've got Ruby Daring Tracker, which is the signpost of the set, or of the archetype. And so you've got a 1/2 haste for 2 that gets +2/+2 if you have power 4 or greater among creatures, so it can trigger itself as well. And then you can use it as a ramper to tap for red or green. And so I have mixed feelings about Ruby and whether or not you should really lean into the Ruby build, because most of the power 4 comes at the 4-cost cards. And the fact that it's a 1/2 haste that can become a 3/4, like, I've definitely lost games to Ruby Daring Tracker where my opponent is just going really crazy, right? And like, you can use the Verdant Outrider, the 4/2 green card for 3, to start triggering this as early as turn 3. And then you're attacking with a 3/4 on turn 3, so it can be good in the Gruul aggro deck. And then it's okay. It's a lesser version than Fawn, though, if you are in the ramp strategy, because it's not also a fixer, because it doesn't let you play your Imidane's Recruiters or your Candy Grapple and things like that. So I don't actively want this card as much as I do Fawn. Really depends on the approach, so keep that in mind as you're drafting. Ask yourself, are you more of a mid-range deck? Or are you more of an aggro deck? Because if you are more of the aggro deck, then Ruby Daring Tracker goes up in value. Edgewall Inn has been fantastic. I really like it in Gruul, Dimir, and Simic. The blue off of... there's a couple of blue spells that are particularly nice to get back that are adventures. And then in the Gruul archetype, you have a whole bunch of cards that are adventures. And so this can be basically a tap 3, sacrifice it to draw 2 cards. If you view the adventure cards as 2 cards in 1, then that's a pretty good ability for a tap land. But do keep it in mind, if you are aggro, you don't really want tap lands, or at least not more than 1 in your deck. And then I've enjoyed the Ariat's Tempting Apple most in Rakdos and Orsov. So if you are kind of in that tempo deck or an aggro deck, then the Tempting Apple is good, but it's better the more damage that you're doing early. So keep that in mind. This is better for the aggro build, and a little bit less so for the ramp to big good stuff build. And then we've got Redcap Gutter Dweller, which was the rare that I chose to for my draft skeleton, and that's because it performs best in Gruul. You think maybe Rakdos because of the rat synergies, and it's fine, right? It's fine in every red archetype, but being able to dig through your deck is something that I've found pretty nice in Gruul when it gets to that kind of later game. And the fact that this comes down as a 4/4 menace that triggers your cards that care about having power 4, while also giving you additional stuff later in the game, trying to help you find your big threats, has worked better in Gruul than it has in any other red archetype. And then we've got Gruff Triplets, and this is a top performer in every green archetype, so not specific to Gruul. If you have the opportunity to play this card, do it. The only downside is that it has 3 pips of green, which makes it green. You want green to be your majority color. I can't remember off the top of my head how many sources you need for 3 pips on turn 6, but it is more than 9, I'm pretty sure. So you're going to want to be majority green if you can manage it. The Huntsman's Redemption is a card that performs best in Gruul and Celestia, and being able to tutor has been particularly nice, as I mentioned, for adventure cards that allow you to cast a spell as well as create a creature. So the more that you can kind of 2-for-1 off of sacrificing your creature works pretty nicely in Gruul. And then giving the +2/+2 and trample also fits nicely with the kind of trample synergies, Titanic growth thing that's going on in Gruul. And then Fonsbane Troll, I really like. It's best in Golgari, where you don't have to splash for it. But outside of Golgari, Gruul and Simic are its best archetypes to splash, and they are going for the they're really good in that kind of ramp strategy where this comes down as a 5/5 for 4 is one of the best things that you can ramp to on turn 4. And then the fact that you can kind of use this to also remove your opponent's threats has just been a very impressive card in general, and I look to splash this one often. And then we've got the Goose Mom, the Goose Mother, and this card performs best in Simic, where you don't have to worry about splashing it. It also performs really well in Celestia. But I'm always looking to splash this if I'm in blue or green, and I think that this card gets passed way too often. I've been surprised with the amount of times that I've been able to draft the Goose Mom. So keep your eyes out for it. This is definitely an archetype, or this is definitely a set where splashing is encouraged. So keep your eyes out for the Goose Mom. And the last card is the Realm Scorcher Hellkite. I really enjoy it in Izzet, where you can take advantage of the bargain synergies, but Boros and Rakdos are both not very interested in this card because it is a 6-drop, and so you're a very aggressive archetype, you're trying to get the game over. In Gruul, though, at least in the mid-range rampy Gruul, is kind of the natural red spot for it, so I think that it is equally good in Gruul as it is in Izzet. So, thank you for watching to the end of the video. I hope it helps you get those trophies and draft infinitely. I post multiple videos a week, so remember to hit like and subscribe for more Magic the Gathering content, and I'll be back next week to cover another archetype, so if you have one in mind, let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, I'll just choose whatever one I want. Thank you all for the support.